Hello everyone, we're standing here today at the World Hydrogen Week organized by World Hydrogen Leaders. My name is Johann Wiebe, I'm the Executive Director of the Hydrogen Standard. And with me here today stands René Cotting from Smartenergy. Welcome René.
Welcome as well. Thank you to have me invited here.
Fantastic, pleasure to have you. So René, tell us a little bit about Smartenergy.
Yeah, Smartenergy, we are an investor and a developer of green hydrogen. And we actually started about 2011, and we have already done about 7 gigawatt of solar panels around the world, and we have a 12 gigawatt pipeline. But then we saw that we are adding the hydrogen engine to it, and so we are 400 people around the globe.
Jumping straight into sort of the relevance of this conference, which is great, of course, hydrogen. But can you tell us a little bit, maybe one step back, sort of like the one-stop shop that you guys refer yourself to?
Yes, we are covering actually when you are coming to us as an investor and you say, hey, I want to decarbonize, I want to have hydrogen, I want to have solar energy, then we do everything. We are starting with the sourcing, looking for the permits, doing the engineering, plan the whole sites, getting then the construction going, structuring the financing. And when it's then standing and we have the COD and it's kicking on, then we also do the assets management, the servicing, everything. So the only thing what you are getting is then a nice return.
Who doesn't want to have a nice return? And it sounds like you guys cover a lot. Originally, if I can say it like that, you guys are focused on the power side of the value chain, being an investor and developer of project, if I say it correct. Now decided to go sort of downstream integration into hydrogen. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because we really started with solar. And then we saw that the solar prices are kind of fluctuating, and you have certain days when the wind is blowing and the solar and the sun is shining that the price is getting negative. So how do you hedge that? Because investors started then to ask, hey, how can I get still a return with solar? In Iberia, Spain, Portugal, you still get it because the power grid is not so much elaborated like, for instance, in Germany, where you can get negative prices into it. So we said, hey, green hydrogen is the right thing to do because then you consume a lot of energy, and by consuming, you are becoming interesting, and then you can really hedge and getting a nice return. That's why 4 years ago, we went into hydrogen. Now the projects are getting along, and now we are reaching, very soon the first FIDs.
You made a presentation about gap analytics or analysis. Can you tell us about gap analysis?
Yeah. You know, it's not such a gap. It's such a gap.
It's a huge gap.
It's a huge gap. So what I was telling is the gap about what is the ambition. Like, for instance, the EU says, okay, 150 gigawatt electrolyzer capacity by 2030. But I took the idea and said, hey, if I take the hydrogen which is produced today, 95% of the hydrogen still with fossil fuel, just replacing that, then add the new transport, heat, power, etc. to it, I need 1,200 gigawatt electrolyzer capacity. And if I then take the Paris path, I would need about 700 gigawatt electrolyzer capacity. 700 gigawatt, and then for each gigawatt you need to have another 2 to 3 gigawatt of solar panels, right? That comes on top of it. But then I look at what was announced, about 470 if I take all the newspapers together and all the press releases. And then I look into what the government have targeted, about 240 gigawatt electrolyzer targets in their strategies. Then I look about, okay, how much of what was announced is credible? And I get about 220 gigawatt electrolyzer. So is there a starting and ending date? Is there somebody who has enough of financial power behind it? And if I then assume that building all this will not be 100%. There will be a certain fraction who will make it, so I take 60%. I'm saying it will be more than half. Then we are at 120 gigawatt. And then I look into what is right now under construction. I only have 4 gigawatt electrolyzer capacity right now, and how much do we have is 800 megawatt in operation. So it's a huge gap we need to cover.
And all of this needs to be covered by 2030.
2030, and when I take the EU with a 100 gigawatt electrolyzer, you need about 440 billion euros in order to make that happen, plus then the additional investments of the users of green steel factories, of the trucks, of the aviation, and. So it's a lot of investments who need to come in.
And investments can come from different angles. Obviously, we got private investment and also from the government. From the Europe, we've got 800 million so far tranche compared to all the billions that you're quoting. That sounds very little, but there's also individual governments that are pledging quite considerable amounts, much larger than the 800 million to develop the hydrogen strategy. If we tally that all up, what sort of scenario are we at then?
Well, you see the huge gap. You need to unlock hundreds of billions, and what you don't get in order to get hundreds of billions is just subsidies. It will not work. The interest rates have increased tremendously. We talk about the 6 months Euribor of 4.2% right now, and also the burden of interest of governments has increased tremendously. So if you now come and say, I need hundreds of billions, from where is it coming? You can go to pension funds, but the pension funds are quite risk averse. So if you say, hey, I want to have hydrogen, then they ask, okay, what is the price? I don't know really. For how long? The only thing I know is that the price will go down. The more is coming on, so the security is not there. So it's a chicken and egg issue there.
Another one. We already have quite a few of that in the industry, right? Chicken and egg conundrums.
We have a lot of eggs and a lot of chicken, so we need to find that gap. But there is a solution to it, because what you need to do is to give to the investors a de-risk. So how can you reduce the risk that they can get the money with a decent return back? This is all.
So how do you do that?
So one way is, of course, equity providers, venture capital, etc. They say, okay, I go in full equity. If I'm early in, I have a multiple coming out if it works out, right? But that's not enough, because this is only a certain fraction. What is best is we utilize certain models which we utilize in other areas. For instance, for export industry, you have export credit agencies. They are backing the lenders who are providing the debt to the one who purchasing the goods who are exported, up to 95% of the debt. And then they would kick in if the project does not work out as much as foreseen. So you need to have a kind of an ECA. You renew the ECA just for green hydrogen in order to make, not just for export, but actually in order to do this energy transition.
Let me hook into that. So how would sort of move around the risk actually help the industry to scale or sort of ramp up some of the projects that are currently lacking?
Absolutely. So you need to reduce the risk. So you look at what are the mechanisms to reduce the risk. That's the key. Now, who can reduce the risk? And there the agencies are coming in, the governments are coming in, not subsidies. It's just, when I go to the bank, I give an example. I'm right now financing a 186 megawatt solar plant. In order to get 130 million loan for that, we had a 9 months due diligence, market, technical, legal, financial, etc. But the loan will be backed up now with ECA coverage, and that's why I can then also get much lower interest rates, which is then also interesting for the return of the project. So you get this kind. What you also can do is you look at what happened at the financial crisis 2008. So you give quasi-equity as a government into it, which means that if it works out well, the taxpayer has also an upside into it. Or you can also give grants under certain conditions as a government. So there are different ways in order to facilitate then that the lender feels comfortable in order to provide the hundreds of billions.
Okay, it's a quite a complex foundation that you sort of made for us in terms of sort of your gap analysis, the ambitions that we have, and where we stand today in order to achieve them, and how we're going to get there by 2030, and if we're going to get there at all, and what sort of time frame. I mean, we haven't even talked about sort of raw material requirements. What sort of implications is that going to be on sort of like such a scale up? But taking it down a little bit more towards like your business, Smart Energy, and what sort of solutions does Smart Energy provide sort of like into this space, given sort of your analysis in consideration?
Yeah. So principally you can come as an investor, and we have an equity vehicle, 18 projects, SPVs underneath. You can become equity holder of it. So you actually support then our projects, and in order to make this transition happen. The other one is obviously all of our projects are very close to the off-taker. So we have long-term agreements we are seeking at, but we're also going to synthetic aviation fuels, because there the regulation is quite clear. Also for investors, you need to have 2% on kerosene you need to replace by SAF, and then by 2025, and then 2030 over 6%. And if you cannot do it, you are bound to penalties. And that means security for some investors. Say, hey, SAF is the right way to go. We have those projects, so you can join in and become investor into Smart Energy vehicle.
Fascinating, René Cotting. I have the impression we could talk much longer about various subjects you guys are engaged in, but so far, René Cotting from Smart Energy, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye-bye.